if there's anyone that I could possibly imagine I would want to learn from on how to talk to my kids about sex, it is Cindy. She's been an incredible advisor, friend. I always, whenever I have any issues with anything, frankly, I turn to Cindy. Her advice is not only practical, but she is very straightforward. There's no bullshit. Like, you gotta kind of, she will give it to you straight, which I really very much appreciate. No beating around. And of course, her business, MakeLoveNotPorn, we're huge fans of it. She'll tell you a little bit more about that. Not only fans, but also investors in it. We really believe in the work that she's doing and the values that she holds. And super excited to have, not forced, but asked kindly if she would come up to Hudson and present to our community here. So super excited to have Cindy Gallop here, and warm welcome for Cindy.
Thank you very much, Gigi. So what I'm going to talk to you about today, everybody, is why I started the business that I have, because I did not set out to start it. It was a complete accident. What it actually does, how we help parents currently with Make Love Not Porn, but also what we have coming that is going to help you even more. And then I'm going to talk about the 5 principles of how you talk to children about sex today. And then we're going to open it up to Q&A and discussion. And by the way, Peter is videoing just my talk for the Sparks Library. The video will go off after that, so the Q&A is completely, within these walls, and you're welcome to ask any questions and raise anything that you want. As I say, Make Love Not Porn began as a complete and total accident, and it came about because I date younger men, and they tend to be in their 20s. And 17, 18 years ago, I began realizing through dating younger men that I was encountering an issue that would never have crossed my mind if I had not encountered it very intimately and personally. I realized that I was experiencing what happens when 2 things converge. I was encountering what happens when today's total freedom of access to hardcore porn online meets our society's equally total reluctance to talk openly and honestly about sex. It's when those 2 factors converge that porn becomes sex education by default in not a good way. So I found myself encountering a number of sexual behavioral memes in bed. I went, whoa, I know where that behavior is coming from. I thought, gosh, if I'm experiencing this, other people must be as well. I didn't know that because 17 years ago, no one was talking about this. Nobody was writing about this. This was me in isolation as a naturally action-oriented person going, I'm going to do something about this. So 16 years ago, pure little side venture, I put up on no money a tiny clunky website at MakeLoveNotPorn.com that in its original version was kind of a public service announcement. The construct was porn world versus real world. Here's what happens in the porn world. Here's what really happens in the real world. I launched Make Love Not Porn at the TED conference back in 2009. By the way, I'm conscious there are, young people in the room. I think what I'm going to say is going to go straight over their heads, by the way, so hopefully, that's okay. But I became the only TED speaker to utter the words, "come on my face," on the TED stage, several times in succession. The talk went viral as a result, and it drove this extraordinary global response to my tiny website that I had never anticipated. Thousands of people wrote to me from all around the world, young and old, male and female, straight and gay, pouring their hearts out, telling me things about their sex lives and their porn watching habits they'd never told anyone before, and I realized I'd uncovered a huge global social issue. And so I then felt that I had a personal responsibility. I had to take Make Love Not Porn forwards in a way that would make it much more far-reaching, helpful, and effective. And so I turned it into a business designed to do good and make money simultaneously, which, by the way, is what I believe the future of all business should be, I turned Make Love Not Porn into what we are today, which is the world's first and only user-generated, importantly 100% human-curated, and I'll come on to that in more detail, social sex video sharing platform. So we're kind of what Facebook would be if it allowed you to openly, healthily, socially, sexually self-express, which it clearly does not. The way to think about us is, if porn is the Hollywood blockbuster movie, Make Love Not Porn is the badly needed documentary. We are a unique window onto the funny, messy, loving, wonderful sex that we all have in the real world. And what we're doing is we are socializing, normalizing, destigmatizing sex, bringing it out of the shadows into the sunlight to promote consent, communication, good sexual values and behavior. We are literally sex education through real-world demonstration. And we operate, as a unique business, we also operate uniquely. And I want to just contextualize this next point in the broader tech landscape as a whole, because the young white male founders of the giant tech platforms that dominate all our lives today, they are not the primary target, online or offline, of harassment, abuse, sexual assault, violence, racism, rape, intimate injury abuse. Therefore, they did not and they do not proactively design for the prevention of any of those things on their platforms. And we see the results of that around us every single day. Those of us who are most at risk every single day, women, Black people, people of color, LGBTQ, people with disabilities, we design safe spaces and safe experiences, but we don't get funded. Only 1.7% of all venture capital last year went to female founders. And that is why we have still not seen how much safer, better, happier, and by the way, way more lucrative the future of the internet can be when it's designed and built through the female lens, and these are the two key words, at scale. I designed Make Love Not Porn through the female lens to be the safest place on the internet, because I designed it around what everybody else should have, nobody else did, human curation. There's no self-publishing. Our curators watch every frame of every video submitted from beginning to end before we approve or reject, and we publish it. No one else does that. We review every post on every member profile. And by the way, on Make Love Not Porn, those posts can be as safe work or not safe work as you like, but we review them, we approve or reject, and we publish them. No one else does that. We review every single comment on every single video before we approve or reject, and we publish it. No one else does that. You will find no abuse, no trolling on Make Love Not Porn, nothing but love. And the key point about that is we are tiny bootstrapping, we have no money, and we've human curated everything for 12 years. Imagine what Facebook, Instagram, TikTok could do with their billions if they chose to. Safety on the internet is not a matter of viability, it's a matter of will. And I concepted our revenue sharing business model in order to democratize access to income. So our members pay to subscribe, rent and stream real world sex videos. Half the revenue goes to our contributors, whom we call our Make Love Not Porn stars. These are two of them, lovely young Italian couple, Lily and Max, who share very entertaining videos. Now, I designed my own business around my own beliefs and philosophies, one of which is communication through demonstration. What I mean when I say communication through demonstration is, and this is true of anything, don't say it, be it, do it, show it. And the reason communication through demonstration is important in terms of the problem and the challenge that I'm addressing is because I was the very first person 16 years ago to identify that when we don't talk openly and honestly about sex, porn becomes sex education. Today, you can't turn around without seeing another headline, oh my God, kids and porn. And they talk about kids watching porn, But here's the thing, nobody's watching porn, they're wanking. This is not entertainment you watch, it's entertainment you masturbate to. And I make that point because this is entertainment that is designed to arouse, that will arouse you even when you're watching something you're horrified by. And that can be very confusing, especially if you're young. And that is why communication through demonstration is important, because we are sex education through real-world demonstration. And we're not just that. I want to give you some examples again of why communication through demonstrating is so important. Because we have the power to change people's sexual attitudes and behavior for the better in a way that nothing else can. So in the 12 years we've operated, we've taught countless young people that porn is not sex in the real world. Gen Z loves us. We've made numerous people feel better about their real world bodies, because contrary to every message popular culture sends us every day, which says, you are not hot, attractive or desirable, unless you are this skinny, six-pack abs, look like this, we show you what people really find hot, attractive, and desirable in the real world, which is all of us. And we've saved countless marriages and relationships, and that is literally how people write to us. You saved my marriage. We've inspired communications breakthroughs between couples. We've helped people manage their sex lives through real-world health conditions. Because as the only platform that is a window into how we all have sex in the real world, you know, we have Make Love Not Porn stars who are menopausal. They talk about the impact menopause is having on their sexuality, you know, their partnered sex lives, how they manage through that. We have Make Love Not Porn stars with vaginismus, much more common than most people realize, again, showing how they, you know, are helping deal with their sex lives through that condition. We have cancer survivors. We have people with chronic pain conditions. Orgasms are a big help in that scenario. But basically, you know, this is what we call telehealth for your sex life, because those are all the aspects that medical professionals and doctors do not want to talk about when you're going through treatment for cancer. They don't want to talk about how it's going to impact your sex life. You know, they won't talk about that when it comes to menopause. And so we are helping, showing how real-world people are addressing that with their sexuality. Parents are buying their teenage children subscriptions. They tell us, I want my kids to see what happy, healthy, loving sexual relationships actually look like. And, you know, as with any disruptive technology, use cases emerge the founder never dreamt of. So I was blown away when we began hearing from survivors of rape, sexual assault, sexual abuse. We hear from female survivors, male survivors, trans non-binary survivors. They tell us that Make Love Not Porn helped them reclaim their bodies. We help them feel able to be sexual again post-trauma in a situation where porn is too triggering. And it's not just people who watch our videos. We have a number of Make Love Not Porn stars who tell us being able to share themselves sexually in a completely safe and trustworthy space has helped them process and heal from sexual trauma. I never thought about that as a usage when I came up with this idea. I'm obviously so happy that it is. And, you know, here are just some examples of, again, what I mean by communication through demonstration. So a young woman left this comment on a video. I love this. Thank you for sharing something so intimate. Your uninhibited and unself-conscious sex is joyous, but, and again, this is what happens in the real world, but the snacking, pets wandering by, you know, messing around with the covers, stopping for drinks, choking on said drink, you know, cleaning up with a t-shirt, yawning, etc., are all what makes this so wonderful, together with all the loving foreplay and afterplay. This video is real world sex couple goals. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And, you know, what's interesting about this is, in popular culture all around us, movies, videos, you know, TV, we see many creative expressions and narratives of relationships, but we never see the actual sex. On Make Love Not Porn, you see the actual sex, but you also see the relationships. Because in our videos, those two things are indivisible. And when I say that, I don't just mean that you see, you know, in partnered videos, loving dynamics, you know, healthy relationship dynamics within sex. We have many masturbation videos, solo videos. In those videos, you see what it's like to have a great relationship with yourself. with your own body, your own genitals, your own sexuality. Then, as I mentioned, this is a message from a mother. For my 24 and 22-year-old kids' birthdays this month, I'm buying them subscriptions so they understand what healthy, happy sex relationships look like. On Make Love Not Porn, you can gift subscriptions. And when you gift them, you can write a message of your own choosing. And this is a message that we saw on a gift subscription. Hi, I found this TED Talk on real-world sex versus porn. It's interesting and wonderful. Someone has created a platform that shows real sex by real people that is joyful, pleasurable, and loving. This site is called Make Love Not Porn. It's human curated, not algorithm, sex positive, and models consensual communicative sex and happy, loving relationships. I hope you can take time to explore, enjoy, and learn. Love, Dad. And honestly, we choked up when we saw that message. That is just one, this is to a young man. So this is from a father to his son. And, here's another example. This is a message we received. I'm a sexual health educator for folks with developmental disabilities. A family came to me, their teenage son was leaving violent and disturbing porn on all their shared computers and needed help. It turned out he didn't like the porn he was finding either, but his reading and spelling skills weren't good enough to find what he wanted. I suggested to the family that if he keeps in his bedroom, he could have a subscription to Make Love Not Porn, to make sure he doesn't come across videos that scare him again. It's now been a few months. Here's a screenshot of his email to me thanking me for your site. Success. Thank you for all you do to make exploring sexuality and pleasure safe and wonderful for all. And, I should tell you that, as I mentioned, parents for years have been buying their kids subscriptions. In the past year, those messages have become more frequent and more desperate. So a mother wrote to us a few months ago and said, I've just discovered my 12-year-old son is watching Pornhub. I would rather he watched Make Love Not Porn. I know he's underage. Can we find a workaround? And now at Make Love Not Porn, we are more legal than legal. We are for 18 and over, but our policy is parental judgment trumps that. As a parent, you know what's right for your child. And so that mother has bought her son a subscription to Make Love Not Porn. And we have like a soft onboarding curated list of videos that we recommend, in that scenario. And that's just one example. Another mother wrote and said, I have 3 teenage sons. I want to buy them all subscriptions. Do you have a family plan? And we went, what a great idea. And so we're now trying to figure out how we implement a family plan. And just a couple months ago, this is from an article in the UK Times. And the journalist writes, it was an article about needing to talk to your children about sex these days. And she writes, this is admittedly a bold move, but parents are gifting their kids a digital subscription to Make Love Not Porn. And she'd interviewed me, but I didn't know this. She said she interviewed a mother of a 12-year-old who had bought a subscription for him before he went off to boarding school. And the mother says, I thought he'd grow up very fast there. She says, and I felt a responsibility to get in there first, to give him a normal frame of reference. And it quotes us saying, Make Love Not Porn is a tiny island of good, healthy sex and is very useful. So it was great to hear that played back to us from, an article across the Atlantic. And, finally on communication through demonstration, very importantly, I absolutely designed this platform to demonstrate this. We have a tag for those of our videos that, and we actually invite this, eroticized condom usage. We encourage people to share videos that are, what's the hottest, most arousing way you can introduce the condom into the action, put it on, take it off, dispose of it. Because if people had more creative ideas on how to make those awkward condom moments hot and arousing, there'd be a lot more safe sex happening, a lot less STIs, a lot less unwanted pregnancies. And so we have this tag, Condom Hot, for those videos that demonstrate condoms can be an integral part of great sex, not an interruption to it. So what we're doing in all of this is we are reinventing sexual aspiration. We are reinventing what you should aspire to that demonstrates that you are good in bed. And, as I said earlier, I designed this business around my own beliefs and philosophies, another one of which is I believe that everything in life and business starts with you and your values. So I regularly ask people this question: what are your sexual values? And nobody can ever answer me because we're not taught to think like that. Our parents bring us up to have good manners, a work ethic, sense of responsibility, accountability. Nobody ever brings us up to behave well in bed. But they should, because in bed, values like empathy, sensitivity, generosity, kindness, honesty, trust, respect are as important as those values are in every other area of our lives where we're actively taught to exercise them. This is a young man writing to us, "Your website makes me want to have sex in a more grown-up, honest, and respectful way." And that's important because our mission at Make Love Not Porn ultimately is to help end rape culture globally. Now, that may sound like a very big mission, but we have 12 years of proof of concept at a micro level. We help end rape culture by doing something very simple that nevertheless nobody else anywhere is doing. We show you how wonderful great consensual communicative sex is in the real world. Our social sex videos role model good sexual values, good sexual behavior. And again, the key point, we make all of that aspirational versus what you see in porn and popular culture. One man left a comment saying, "This video makes me want to be a better man in the bedroom and in life." We can do that. And one point of interest about this is, I designed Make Love Not Porn to be fully diverse and inclusive, and we are. Our members, our Make Love Not Porn stars, are all ages, 18 to 80, literally, all races, ethnicities. We're a global platform, a male, female, trans, non-binary, straight, LGBTQ, asexual. But in the 12 years we've operated, we've discovered that Make Love Not Porn is especially a revelation to men. More men of all ages send us grateful emails, leave appreciative comments, and by the way, women love us as well, but this is especially noteworthy because we are something utterly unique that men will find nowhere else on the internet, which is a safe space where men can be and watch other men being open, emotional, and vulnerable around sex. You would not believe the number of men who write this to us regularly. I just watched my first video, Make Love Not Porn, and afterwards I cried. I've said for years, I wish society understood the opposite of what it thinks is true. Women enjoy sex just as much as men, and men are just as romantic as women. Yet neither gender is allowed to openly celebrate either of those facts. We would all be so much better off than they were. I picked up a wonderful Twitter exchange a few years back between two men. The first man had tweeted, as a joke obviously, "I'm looking for some porn recommendations for a pretty weird kink I have, hoping you all can help me. It's a fetish where someone loves and appreciates you for who you are and is loyal and decent. Hit me up with your hottest links, please." And another man replied and said, "There's a website called Make Love Not Porn where real-world couples film themselves making love. It's pretty hot and real. I found a video there where the woman actually said, 'I love you,' while making love to her man. Sincerely, I started crying when I heard that." We are one of the solutions to toxic masculinity. We are the antithesis of Andrew Tate. And by the way, we are equalizing sex in this context because we are enabling men to feel able to be romantic and vulnerable, and we are giving women sexual agency. So this is a comment from a woman. "I felt empowered and emboldened in my own sexual agency while watching this video. Thank you for this gift." We give women agency to see the kind of sex they want to have, know the kind of sex they want to have, and ask for and have the kind of sex they really want to have. And especially right now, when our freedoms are being rolled back as we speak, giving women sexual agency is enormously important. Now, what I did not realize when I embarked on this venture was that my tiny team and I would fight an enormous battle every day, not even to grow Make Love Not Porn, just to keep it going. Basically because every piece of business infrastructure, any other tech startup takes for granted, we can't. The small print always says no adult content. And it's all pervasive. I can't get funded. I can't get banked. MakeLoveNotPorn was debanked 3 times in 2 months earlier this year, some kind of record. 3 banks kicked us out, one after the other. We have now found a 4th bank who welcomed us, thank goodness. Every tech service I need to use, the terms of service always say no adult content. We have huge problems with payments. We're banned for advertising. I'm a great believer that when you have a truly world-changing venture, you have to change the world to fit it, not the other way around. So I'm all about building solutions to my own problems. And I want to share what we are going to be launching in a couple months' time that will especially help all of you. So parents and teachers began reaching out to me from day one of Make Love Not Porn, begging me for the 0 to 18 and beyond sex education extension of what we do. Because parents over the years have become much more clear-sighted about exactly what their children are being exposed to. This is a report on a survey done by Bitdefender, a cybersecurity company. They did a survey of 19,000 parents worldwide that identified the average age at which a child first stumbles across porn online is 6 years old. And by the way, that survey is 13 years old. So you can bet it's worse now. And so we are building, in response to this request, MakeLoveNotPorn.academy. This is what I characterize as the Khan Academy of sex education. Because Khan Academy, the online tutoring platform, tutors on every other topic under the sun except this one. Educational technology, EdTech, is exploding as a category not in this area. So we are building the academy on the same principles as Make Love Not Porn, user-generated, crowdsourced, curated revenue share. Because I'm not about reinventing the wheel. This is an aggregation play. We are building the go-to global hub for the best of the world sex education content that is already out there, but is being blocked, censored, and deplatformed everywhere as we speak. And so our mission with the Academy is to organize the world's sex education information to make it universally accessible and useful. That is a deliberate paraphrase of Google's original mission statement, organize the world's information to make it universally accessible and useful, because today, Google is not in this area. The algorithm is biased, it's censoring. Parents and teachers tell me all the time, when they search for the resources they want, they cannot find them. And so we are building the Google of sex ed, which will enable you to search, again, 100% human curated. Human eyes will vet every educator, every piece of content, but you'll be able to search by age appropriateness. So if you're freaking out going, oh my God, my 6-year-old asked this, what do I say? We're going to give you the tools and content to be able to have that conversation with a 6-year-old. If you're a teacher with a class of 14-year-olds, we have a ton of brilliant lesson plans, curricula, age-appropriate teaching materials. If you're an adult, access all areas. This is cradle-to-grave education. Adults are equally desperate for it. But importantly, the Academy will be where children and young people can access sex education without parental teacher gatekeeping. And the reason that's important is, I have a friend who's a mother, and as you have to these days, she monitors her kids' browsing history. So this happened a few years ago. Her son was 8 years old. She saw to a horror that on the family computer, he had Googled sex for children. So she freaked out, but did the right thing. Stayed calm, sat him down. Darling, I happen to see, talk me through why. This anecdote is adorable and horrifying in equal measure because her son wanted to learn about sex. He was a child. He knew he was a child. He wanted to learn about sex in a child-appropriate way. He sweetly, innocently Googled sex for children. You can imagine the kind of thing that came back utterly traumatized. And so the Academy will be where an 8-year-old boy can enter his age on the homepage, or a parent can enter it for him, and we will only serve age-appropriate educational content. You'll be able to search also by cultural sensibility. So, we will have Jewish sex ed, Muslim sex ed, Christian sex ed, and you can search, here's the very important thing, by personal comfort level. We just put all this together. You decide what's right for your family, your classroom, your school. So we are going to be launching a minimum viable product, very bare bones. We're going to take it live in a couple months' time. We'll make sure that you are all alerted when we do, because we're going to look for people to be testing it and giving us feedback. But all of this means that I've spent 16 years talking to parents who've reached out to me for advice. And I'm not a professional sex educator, but I have spent 16 years on the front line of seeing what happens when we do not educate children about sex openly and honestly. And so I want to share with you now 5 principles that I recommend about how you talk to your children about sex. And the first one is start as early as possible. And by the way, if there are parents here whose kids are now older, have not had that conversation, there's no time like now to start regardless. But the reason I say this is because in the world we live in today, it is enormously important that you do begin talking to your children about sex as early as possible. And when I say that, I don't mean literally talk about sex. What I mean is, the very first time your child asks where babies come from, plays with their genitals, the most important thing isn't even what you say as much as how you say it. Never ever get visibly embarrassed. Never get flustered. Don't change the topic, leave the room, shut them up. Instead, answer them calmly, straightforwardly, honestly, because the moment you do that, you open up a channel of communication between you and them that will be there for them for the rest of their lives around this topic. I'm not a parent by choice, but I do know that the one thing a parent wants more than anything else is for their child to be happy. This area will impact your child's happiness more than almost anything else. And so it's really important that you begin talking and educating about sex as early as is humanly possible. And the second thing to bear in mind is it is absolutely not about the talk, it's about lots of them. This is an ongoing dialogue. And so, too often, because of awkwardness, because of embarrassment, parents feel it's the one and done approach. No, absolutely not. It has to be an ongoing dialogue. And, a couple of points about that. The first is, I recommend using real-world prompts and actually being on the lookout for these, whether that is you're watching something together, maybe it's a sex scene in a movie, or there's something in the news. Absolutely take that opportunity to feed in what you want to feed in, what you want them to know off the back of that. By the way, when you do that, you are doing every other parent a favor as well. Because, so I have a friend who I actually met at TED when I gave my talk in 2009. Everybody came up to me after that talk. They said it made them realize how much TED, which is all about ideas worth spreading, never ever put a speaker on the stage to talk about sex. That was the very first talk ever. And by the way, still one of the very rare ones on the TED stage. But anyway, my friend Margaret Stewart sat next to me at lunch. She went, "Oh my God, I have 3 young children. I never even thought about this issue. I'm going straight back home after TED and I'm educating the fuck out of them, basically." And she, and we're now very good friends, so I've seen her and her family many times over the years. And she said to me that she has always made it a point to make sure that her children are fully educated because she said, "I know what disinformation gets disseminated in the schoolyard. I'm sending my kids in there armed with the right information." So when you educate your children, you are helping, their peers and other parents because they will be the disseminators of accurate information. Now, today, when you talk to your child about sex, you must also at the same time talk to your child about porn. And this is a lot easier to do than most parents think, because all you have to do is share a version of what I'm about to give you, and you dial it up or down depending on the age of the child. So what you do is you go, "So darling, we just talked about sex. And you know how together we watch movies and videos and cartoons where things happen that aren't real? Well, there are also movies and videos about sex, and they're not real either. And because of that, they can be quite confusing, And so we would rather you did not watch them till you're older. But if anyone ever shows you anything like that, or you stumble across it, come and talk to me, come and talk to us. We can explain it. That's all you have to say. You can end that conversation right there, because just by saying that, you've done two very important things. The first is you've set up in their minds for when they stumble across porn, as they will, it's not real. And the second thing you've said is, come and talk to me about it. And you'll want them to do that because what they stumble across is likely to be utterly traumatizing. So have that conversation as early as possible, and again, be open to having that conversation on an ongoing basis, because again, I've had so many parents and young people write to me over the years. A father wrote to me years ago on Facebook, and his message was headed, "My wife and I cannot thank enough what you're doing." He said, "We have a 10-year-old son, and we decided it was time to have the sex talk." So I sat him down, and he said to me, "Daddy, why do men wear masks when they're having sex?" And this father wrote, he said, "We have parental controls on our iPad, and my 10-year-old son has somehow managed to find his way to a site where men wear masks when they're having sex." He said, "When he's older, we're sending him straight to your website." So, whatever controls you have at home, your kids go round to the neighbor's house, they're being shown things on their classmates' phones in the schoolyard. That is why you must get in there on this topic as early as possible. Principle number 4 is take the shame out of sex. And this is important both for your children, but also for your conversations with them on this topic. So one of the things the Academy will do is we plan to have cutting-edge sex education, because the pace of education has not kept up with the pace of technology and the societal ills that are resulting. So we will have education on sextortion, on intimate abuse, and on AI chatbot relationships, because, by the way, the percentage of kids engaging in relationships with chatbots, including romantic and sexual ones, is exploding, literally, as we speak. And I'm not sure if you're all familiar with what sextortion is, but sextortion is now an industrialized systemic issue online, and it particularly impacts teenage boys. And sextortion is when a scammer poses as a girl, young woman, persuades the boy to send them sexy naked photographs, then immediately reveals that they are a blackmailer and demands money. And a horrifying number of teenage boys have committed suicide because of sextortion. And they've done that in a very short time frame. Literally, within an hour of being sextorted, teenage boys have hung themselves, unfortunately, where the family owns a gun, shot themselves. And that is a combination of both, unfortunately, the impulsivity of youth, but also because of the enormous shame that we've imbued all of this with. If we didn't feel shame around sex, sextortion would not be as huge as it currently is, and intimate image abuse would not be the scourge it currently is. And so the really important thing is absolutely make sure in your interactions with your children and your conversations, take the shame, guilt, and embarrassment out of all of this. Because, I've spent 16 years seeing firsthand every day the enormous human misery and unhappiness occasioned by the guilt and the embarrassment that we imbue sex with. And, I also really encourage you to, because taking the shame out of this requires you taking the shame out of yourselves. And I encourage you to kind of think consciously about what is holding you back from talking honestly to your children about all of this. I have a friend who is quite a bit older than me, and we were talking about Make Love Not Porn, and she told me that many, many years ago, her daughter was 15. And my friend, as again in classic fashion, went, "Oh, she's 15, probably I really should have the sex talk with her." And so she sat down with her daughter, and she discovered, unsurprisingly, she was too late. Her daughter revealed she had already had sex. And my friend, by her own admission, reveals that she reacted very, very badly to discovering this. The conversation went south in a big way, and they never ever talked about sex again. And years later, and this is when her daughter was in her 30s, married with kids of her own, they had lunch, and my friend said what she'd been dying to say for many years. She said, listen, I just want to apologize for the way I reacted when we had that conversation all those years ago. It was completely wrong of me. I shouldn't have, done that, been like that. I'm so sorry. And I've felt bad about it ever since. And her daughter said to her, and this, this really made an impact on me. Her daughter said to her, all I wanted to know was that you enjoyed it. And think about, a 15-year-old, and who knows what circumstances she had first had sex in, because, the conversation did not allow for any kind of exposition. And she just wanted to know that it was okay and her mother enjoyed it. So take shame out of your own, attitudes, and absolutely be open, and insofar as you can, be honest about your own experiences too. By the way, just on that front, and again, this is why I'm building holistic products that help everybody. So I've taught a number of high schools, and I gave a talk about Make Love Not Porn years ago to Santa Monica High School. And, in the coffee break after, it was a TEDx Youth, and so it was a series of talks to the high school. In the coffee break after my session, I was rushed by a ton of high schoolers, all of who wanted to ask me things. And, I made sure that I found a confidential corner and made sure that each one of them could talk to me without being overheard by the others. And, a high school girl came up to me and said, so I'm having sex with my boyfriend, and, I'm not coming. And I really want to, and he seems to have no problem. And, can you give me some advice? Yeah. And, my response was, because, I always try and encourage this. I said, well, can I ask, have you talked to your mother about this? And she went, oh, yes, I have, but she can't help me because she's never had an orgasm either. Okay, so that is the world we're living in. And so, with Make Love Porn, we're out to help everybody. But honestly, do share your own positive experiences, because it really, really helps your children. And my fifth principle is, so there's a reason that the name of our brand is Make Love, Not Porn, because we do everything through the lens of love. So Make Love Not Porn is love in action, and the Academy will be education through love. And the reason I say that is because we are now living in a world where children are growing up as much through screens as IRL. Because they are communicating massively through screens, IRL social interactions are awkward and insecurity inducing. They are stumbling across porn at the age of 6. They are forming relationships with chatbots where they don't know it's a machine, not a person. And, a chatbot relationship is completely friction-free. Chatbots play back exactly what you want to hear. It's a reinforcement loop. What is being lost in all of that is the joy, the connection, the messiness, the friction, the intimacy, the wonderfulness, and the heartbreak of first love. I've said for years to parents what I said to you, which is begin educating about sex as early as possible. I've also said begin educating about love. Because love is such a foundational construct in our society, we leave it to popular culture to define. Educate your children about love and about how wonderful it is to engage with another human being. And yes, you will get your heart broken, and it's going to happen again and again, but that's part of the wonderfulness of actually connecting with somebody in a way that you cannot when it's a chatbot or you are simply messaging through screens. And so I did a wonderful thing earlier this year. I had no idea that there was this amazing organization called the National League of Young Men. Are any of you familiar with this organization at all? Oh my God, again, they need to do a much better PR job. So the National League of Young Men is a non-profit. It's nationwide. It has chapters all around the US. It is an organization for mothers and their high school sons. So 14 to 18-year-old teenage boys. And each chapter, the mothers run each chapter. And they create a series of programming events that are designed to help those boys grow up as fine, upstanding future members of and leaders of the community. So full credit to the mothers of the Greenwich, Connecticut chapter of the National League of Young Men, who reached out to me at the start of this year and said, we would like you to come and talk to 50 high school boys about Make Love Not Porn. And it was fantastic because they sent a car, to bring me to one of their homes in Greenwich, where there's a very large living area that we could get all the boys into. Some of them were on Zoom, who couldn't be there in person. First of all, they fed them, very good idea, shoved tons of pizza and sushi down them. Then the mothers said, right, we are now going to close the doors to this area. We are going off over there. We know nothing. We hear nothing, we see nothing. Cindy's not reporting back on anything specific. You will be alone with Cindy. Take advantage of this opportunity. So I gave a short presentation about Make Love Not Porn and why we exist and so on, and then opened it up for Q&A discussion. And you can imagine a room full of high school teenage boys, deathly silence, giggle, giggle, Then one boy asked a question. Then another was, and then the floodgates opened, And I'd obviously made it very clear they could ask me anything. And they were adorable, Do girls really like big cocks? Which David Charles goes, no, it's not what you've got, it's what you do with it. So I was able to land a number of messages, including very important one. Somebody asked about condoms, and I went, yep, always carry them, always use them. And so one boy went, but what about plan B? What about, what the girl, and honestly, I went, have you seen the political climate in this country? And I thought, oh no, of course you haven't, your high school boys. So, but I went, no, your responsibility every time. You carry condoms, you always use them. So I was able to land them. But essentially, all of the questions they were adorable. They were about, crushing and liking people and what do they really like and what should they do, and this is absolutely what children, young people want to know, because they are coming at it from love, and we need to frame the conversation with love, and we need to educate through love. I think the really important thing about all of this, in terms of what I've just said, is everything I've talked about today is how you actually keep your children safe. Okay? You do not keep your children safe when you do not talk to them about any of this. Last year, we launched an equity crowdfunding campaign and raised some money to be able to build Make Love Not Porn Academy. And our lead investor, who actually proposed the crowdfunding campaign, was the wonderful actress Jamila Jamil. You may be familiar with her from She-Hulk. She's a fantastic South Asian actress. And she sat on a panel with me in London last fall to spread word about the Academy to a UK audience. And she is very vocal about the impact porn had for her growing up, on her self-esteem, on her relationships. And, one of the things she said in our discussion really struck me, because she said, I would have preserved my innocence a lot longer if I'd been educated about sex. Because I wasn't, and she came from a South Asian household, her parents absolutely never, went anywhere near this topic. She said, my innocence disappeared very, very quickly because I was looking for answers in all the wrong places, which is what children are doing these days. And so everything I've talked about is actually how you keep your children safe and how you preserve their innocence for as long as possible. Our global operating system is sexual shame. We can change our global operating system to ensure our children experience sexual joy, which is absolutely how it should be, and what all of us should experience. The question really is, do you want your children to grow up to make love, not porn? Or would you rather grow up to make porn, not love? Because if you don't intervene, that is what is going to happen. So thank you very much for hearing me out. And I would love to answer any questions and discuss anything anybody would like to raise. And